Hello everyone, welcome to this weekly outlook for EU. Inside this outlook, I'm going to explain what my expectation for price is for this week and what I'm expecting price to do. Now, if you remember last week, I outlined that I'm expecting lower prices for EU, and you can see we exactly did that. We formed this bearish down close candle, this bearish weekly candle, and we closed lower. Now, with this candle, we also tested this weekly fair value gap, and we started to fill this internal range liquidity. Now the question is that are we going to now immediately expand straight away higher towards the long-term bond liquidity, or we can still see lower prices in the short term before we could continue moving higher? And to answer that, my expectation is that I'm expecting price to at least retrace back to this monthly inverse fair value gap and fill this internal range liquidity before it starts moving higher, because we've already had this huge expansion, and I think we can retrace a bit lower before we can continue higher. On the weekly, you can see we've taken out external range liquidity. Now the expectation is to fill this internal range liquidity before moving higher towards this weekly fair value gap. Now let's drop down to the daily time frame and let's see what we've got there. On the daily time frame, again, we've got the same narrative. You can see we've taken out external range liquidity, and with that we formed this order block. You can see that these three consecutive candles took out this high, and then price closed below it, closed below these candles, and now these three candles have become our order block, our key level right here. And what I'm expecting price to do this week is to take out this Friday's candles high, and then from there retrace lower towards this daily fair value gap, right? And this daily fair value gap also aligns with the monthly inverse fair value gap. So you can see that the monthly, weekly, and daily time frames are all in alignment with each other, and they are producing the same narrative. That is that we can expect a short-term retracement towards this inverse fair value gap and this internal range liquidity before we could move higher. And based on this market context and narrative, I'm expecting this week to form bearish price action on the lower time frames. Now let's drop down to the 4-hour time frame and let's see what else we've got there. On the 4-hour time frame, you can see that after we purged liquidity above this high, we formed this dealing range. And with this dealing range and with this expansion swing lower, we took out an external range liquidity. We took out ERL below this low. And now, before we could continue moving lower towards this long-term higher time frame drawn liquidity, what I'm expecting price to do is to first of all retrace higher, rebalance this dealing range and reach the equilibrium of this dealing range and fill this internal range liquidity and test this gap before we continue moving lower. So for this week, at the start of the week, on Monday and Tuesday, I'm expecting price to retrace higher towards this short-term drawn liquidity, this short-term internal range liquidity, and rebalance the dealing range and fill this IRL. And once it does that, then I expect price to expand lower towards the long-term drawn liquidity lower. That is what my expectation for this week is. Now regarding entry opportunities, the first entry that I'm going to look for is a short trade from here. Once we rebalance this dealing range and fill this internal range liquidity there, I'd look for a candle range, and once that candle range gets purged, I'm going to then look for an entry there. And again, then maybe for the rest of the week on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, I'm then going to look for continuation candle ranges on the 4-hour and my drawn liquidity, and in those cases would be this 4-hour internal range liquidity right here. And this is what I'm expecting. And if I found any trade setups or any trade ideas, any high probability valid trade ideas, I'll make sure to share it with you inside the group.